Alhamdulillah. So yesterday we were looking at the journey, the Rihla of life, really, and the central purpose of the human being, which is to know their Lord, in this body that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed us in for this time. It's a mustawda and a mustaqar. We've been placed in this cage, and the soul is in the cage, and we've been told to do certain things, and we were reminded by these prophets who came. And then during periods of time after people forgot, you had long periods of time, and for whatever reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for that, and that's His wisdom, there are periods where there were not prophets, large periods of time for certain people. One of the distinctions of the Bani Israel was that they were given prophets one after another. And certainly the Ali Imran, we know there are families of the Ali Ibrahim that have a special status. The Ali Yaqub and the Ali Ishaq, Ali Ismail. The line of the Prophet ﷺ is the Ismaili line, and the line of the Jewish prophets is the Al-Ishaq, goes to Yaqub alayhi salam, and then to all of that line of prophets. But we know that there's no people that didn't have a prophet. All of them had prophets. And we know that everywhere on the globe, wherever human beings have been, as groups, aggregates, there have been prophets, and there have even been prophets who were sent to them just for themselves. So, and we don't know their numbers. Some of later Christianity is not part of our understanding of what Isa alayhi salam brought, but Allah acknowledges them as Christians and as people, despite any deviations they have in their religion. And we also believe that our Prophet ﷺ came as nasikh, that his religion has abrogated the previous dispensations that came to other peoples. And what that means is that it's an acknowledgement of all of these previous religions that came, that were all Islam in reality. And that's a khilaf Imam Suyuti mentions in the Hawi, whether Islam is specific to our religion, but it was the deen of the Anbiya, but then the other religions were called different names. Khilaf amongst the ulama, whether or not Islam is a universal for all previous religions, or whether it was specifically the religion of the Fitra religion that was given to our Prophet honorifically for all of humanity. But before that, the Jewish religion was a specific religion for the Jews, the Christian for the Christian, and whatever religions there were in these other places. That's a khilaf, but the meaning of Islam is our relationship with our Lord, which is submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we believe that Islam abrogates what went before our religion. And the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim, he said, a Jew and a Christian will not hear about this religion and die not believing in it, except that they're ashab al-nar. And that's a sound hadith. Obviously in Aqidah, we have an understanding about ahad hadith and their relationship in Aqidah. So there's the jazm of things is very dangerous to make in Aqidah about. But even Imam al-Ghazali in Faisal al-Tafriqa talks about three types of people that hear of Islam. Those who live amongst the Muslims and see the true Islam. And these people, the hujjah is against them. If they die in that state of rejecting Islam, then the proof is against them. And then people who live near the lands of Islam, and these people are in a precarious situation because they're exposed to it, and they could know, but less so than the people amongst the Muslims. And then finally the people in far distant lands who have never heard of Islam. Imam al-Ghazali says, if the people near the lands of Islam have a distorted image of Islam, then they're not judged according to their rejection of the distortion, because what they're rejecting is not Islam, but a distorted image of Islam. And he likens them, and this is a deep sociological insight from Imam al-Ghazali, he likens them to people amongst us, he says, who hear about false prophets like Safah and Muqaffa and these false prophets that came and told lies, and everybody said, oh, they're just liars and deceivers. He said, no Muslim is interested in finding out about Musaylima, right? He's just not, because he's been told since he was a little child that he's a false prophet. And he said, well, this is also true of people, Christians and Jews and others. So he's recognizing the filters of a society. These are sociological filters that are important, and they're very hard to penetrate. It's quite rare for people to have a natural ability to penetrate beyond their historicity, beyond where they come from. And so he takes a very merciful view of that. But it's still, we believe that Islam abrogates, and that the true path and the last and final path is Islam. And some of the modern trends to argue for a type of that all religions are equal and all religions have, and that's not an Islamic belief. It's not a belief of the Muslims. It's very clear, our religion is clear about that, and it's actually considered ijma' according to Imam al-Laqani. So this is the mujma' of our community, is that previous dispensations, although Islam recognizes truth in them, and this is an important distinction, it also recognizes that there are good people among them, and this is important also. So you don't make blanket statements about other traditions, because there are good people amongst them, and there are people also of righteousness amongst them. There are people that are attempting to live according to their truths. And so you will find righteous Christians that are practicing charity and practicing mercy and taking care of the widow and the orphan and doing these good deeds and believing in the last day and believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so really the Muslims shouldn't look at contempt at other peoples that are outside of our faith, because Islam is looking with the eye of mercy, really, to look at people with mercy. The Prophet ﷺ did not look at people with contempt. So that's very important. So for whatever reasons, there are long periods of time where messengers don't come. One of them was the time between Isa and the Prophet ﷺ. There are no prophets between these prophets. The Prophet ﷺ, his people were called Ahlul Fatra. They're the people between these prophets, and they did not have messengers. They had ancient messengers, but these were too far in the distant past for them to remember. They had traces of the Abrahamic teaching left to them, but they had idols introduced into their worship, and amongst them were these Hunafa, these people that were, the Hanif is the one who naturally inclines towards the truth. He's a fitra person. Abu Dhar was one of these people. Abu Dhar was a muwahid before Islam. And this is why when he heard about the Prophet ﷺ, he immediately went to find out. And he stayed in the Kaaba, and he said he drank Zamzam for 1 month. He actually gained weight during that time. He had amazing iman. And they were shocked because he was a Ghifari. Banu Ghifar was one of the tribes that used to attack the caravans. And we forget that the Arabs in pre-Islamic Arabia, food was very scarce. And so the Arabs lived off raiding. This was part of their tradition. And they had decorum that went with the raiding. They had certain adab. It was kind of a give and take type thing, because they knew that one day we're going to have to attack them. And really, this is the way the Arabs were. They knew bloodshed was a very dangerous thing for them, because it would start wars. And we know Harb al-Basus, we know Harb Dahis wa Ghabra. These are wars that the Arabs, Dahis and Ghabra was a war over a horse race that lasted 40 years. A lot of people died in that race. So in that war. So the Arabs, before Islam, they had these very difficult conditions. And so they lived according to this raiding. So the raiders were people like the Banu Ghifar. They were desert Arabs, and when the qawafil would come, the caravans would come. The Arabs say qafila, which is caravan in English, but qayrawan, which is where we get our word caravan from, is only a qafila that carries weapons. That's what qayrawan means. So caravan is a weapon-carrying qafila. But they had the qawafil, and these qawafil would go between these places, and the Arabs would come and they would raid them, the Bedouin Arabs. So Banu Ghifar was one of these. So when the Prophet saw Abu Dharr with his piety, they were amazed. Even the Quraysh were amazed that he was a Ghifari. And when they were beating him, because he just went straight to the Kaaba and said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. He was a thin man. And they started beating him. When Abu Bakr came, he said, this is a Ghifari. All the Quraysh stopped because they knew his tribe. We used to raid the caravan, so they didn't want to mess with him. Baqarah is a restoration of this Abrahamic way, this fitra way. It's really calling to this millah of Ibrahim that is free of the sectarianism, the divisions, of all of the deviations of these previous traditions that have lost their way. And it's time to come back, to get rid of all of the decorum that has clouded your minds, to get back to a simple prayer, not ritualistic, not having all of these hierarchical structures, not having all your bishops and your rabbinical synods, and no, to get back to this simple fitra way, the aboriginal way of worship. And this is what Islam is calling humanity back to. It's really a stripped down way. It's a way, it's what you take on the lifeboat when the boat is sinking. All you need. When Muli al-Arabi was put into a jail in Morocco, he wrote a letter to his brothers and he just said, water and qibla are two things that can never be taken from us. In other words, it doesn't matter where we are, if there's water and qibla, then there's nothing to worry about. Because that's the foundation of our life on earth, is water and qibla. If you have water and qibla, then you have nothing to worry about, right? And alhamdulillah, I had the blessing of living with Bedouin. And one of the things that the Bedouin teach you is how little you need in the world. Really, they teach you that. Because the Bedouin, everything they own is in a little box. Everything they own. And they live very well. I would argue that they live in many ways better than all these so-called civilized people. They're happier, they don't need Prozac, they don't need anxiolytics. Really, they don't need anxiolytics. They smile, it's a natural thing for the Bedouin people in the desert. You see them, they just smile, it's a natural thing. Some of them have permanent smiles etched on their faces because they're always smiling. Really, it's really quite extraordinary to see that. They're not worried about 401k plans. They're not worried about whether the stock market's up or down. They don't have those concerns because nothing, all they need is their tent. Really. And they don't even need that, because if they don't have that, they'll literally make it out of tree branches and things. And people live like that in many places. So this is their life. So the fitra way is this way that the Prophet ﷺ came to restore, a fitra way. It's a way of the original people. Fitra, fatir is the originator. Fitra is the aboriginal nature. It's your original nature. And your original nature is to be happy. It's not to be sad. The baseline of children is actually happy. You know, they get sad when things happen, they get hurt, they're tired, they need food. There's always a reason for their sadness, but they're not endogenously sad, which is what the state of many modern people is, that they're sad and they don't really know why they're sad. They're just sad. They feel sad. The baseline state of humans is to be happy. The baseline state of humans is to be honest. This is why con men are so successful, grifters, because they know that people naturally believe you. If you meet somebody on a bus or an airplane and you start talking, you say, "What do you do?" He says, "I'm a doctor." Most people will believe you, because that's the fitra nature, is to be honest. Lying is something that we teach. It's not something that children are often embarrassingly honest. They'll say things like, "Why is he so fat?" Right? Because they haven't learned yet that there's things that you need to decorum, comportment. There's ways of behaving in the world. But that's the baseline nature. This is the fitra nature, is to be honest. It's not to lie. It's to be honest. And the fitra nature is also to be curious. Curiosity is part of fitra. You want to see what's going on. You want to find out. You're curious. If you see something new, you ask about it. This is the fitra nature, is to want to know and understand. This is how the book of metaphysics begins, that all men want to know. All human beings have a desire to know. Little children have a desire to know. They want to know. And this is very important. And so all of these truths that have been restored with Islam, a restoration of these ancient truths. And the Prophet ﷺ, because he knew that his way was for the last people, he gave us many warnings about things. He knew, for instance, about the diversions and the nature of lahu. Like in the past, if you wanted to have lahu, you had to create your own diversions. If you wanted music, unless you were wealthy, you had to make your own music. You couldn't just play music or turn on a machine. You couldn't, if you wanted to be entertained, you would have to go to a play outdoors. You couldn't just turn on a TV or download a film or something like that. All of these things. And so the Prophet ﷺ warned us about too much diversion, lahu. And this is very important. And about adatul lahwi, about the means of lahu, what the Turks call gawr ijada. Did I say that right? Gawr ijada? Yeah. That's what the Turks call them, gawr ijada. White people's inventions, right? So that's one of the things about the Prophet ﷺ knew that these means of entertainment would come and that people would get lost in them. And so he warned his religion. That's why we have a creative tension. You see, you'll never find anything that has a power of diversion in Islam except you'll have a creative tension in Islam. Like music is a good example of this. There are aqwal of ulama that permit music. And then there are aqwal of ulama that prohibit music. And then there's the people who make very clear caveats about what's permitted and what's not permitted. But the fact that there's a creative tension here is very important in our religion, because what it does, it prevents Muslims from falling completely into something that is inherently profoundly dangerous. Do you see? So Islam it's never blanket. It's always to create this beautiful balance and tension so that Muslims never go completely astray. They can deviate, but the Prophet put all of these checks and balances in his religion to ensure, and this is why you'll find hadiths that seem contradictory, but they're actually not. They're to create these dynamic tensions so that Muslims will always maintain this balance where they don't go completely overboard on either side, because you can become too strict and then there's no recreation, there's no relaxation. The Prophet ﷺ in the Sahih hadith, when they were going to a wedding, he asked Aisha, do they have entertainment? And he said, because the Ansar, they like entertainment. And then he told them to have entertainment. But it was not something that he wanted all the time, because he knew the danger of it. You can become so entertained that you forget the purpose of your existence, of why you're here. So these are really important aspects of our religion that the Prophet ﷺ saw, because he understood the time he was living in. Allah showed him and revealed many things of the end of time that would become clear as time passed. The Prophet ﷺ saw amazing things. He saw inanimate things speaking, and he mentions all of these things. He saw people would talk. He saw the shoes that would talk. Right? You can buy shoes now that talk to you. And he said the end of time won't come until shoes will talk. And he saw things on people's sides that they held on their sides that would tell them what their family was doing at home. They would keep them on their thighs. Right? I mean, and he talked about the shirakun na'al that would speak. This in Arabic is a shirakun na'al. That's what the Arabs call shirakun na'al. When you use in length measurement, they call this shirakun na'al, the universal sign for telephone. Really, it's a universal sign for telephone. And he said the shirakun na'al would talk to a person. Right? So all of these things, the Prophet ﷺ saw these things coming and warned us about this. He said, I didn't see any good except I indicated it to you, and I didn't see any evil except I warned you about it. Nothing, right? Really, there's nothing that the Prophet ﷺ didn't warn us about. And so what happens in each time and place, then it becomes incumbent upon the Muslims for a group of people, ta'ifa, right? This group, to learn the religion and preserve the religion and teach the religion and pass it on. And there becomes two types of people in our religion. There are the people who are the caretakers of knowledge. And these are called the ulama and tulab al-ilm. These are caretakers of knowledge. And then there are the people that are obliged to study with them. They are obliged to study with them. And this is a relationship of trust. It's a relationship of trust. It's also a relationship of mutual respect. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَجَبَابَرَةَ الْعُلَمَاءِ أو كما قال, beware of tyrannical scholars. Scholars that don't allow you to question. The Prophet ﷺ allowed his people to question him. Aisha she would say, wait a second. Doesn't the verse say this? Why are you saying that? I mean, she was thinking so amazingly that she felt comfortable enough to actually, it almost sounds like she's challenging the Prophet ﷺ, but she's not. But she asks in a way to let him know, wait, I need clarification. What Google calls disambiguation. You're saying this, and yet this over here says this. So she wants disambiguation. And she'll ask the Prophet ﷺ about this. So the Prophet and the Sahaba felt comfortable. They did not feel like they couldn't ask him. Even though they had an awe and they did, the Prophet warned of too much questioning. He warned about that. And he said, كَرِهَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ قِيلَ وَقَالَ, Allah hates for you gossip. قِيلَ وَقَالَ وَكَثَرَةُ السُّؤَالِ, and too many, وَإِضَاعَةَ الْمَالِ, and wasting money. He doesn't like too many questions. But the ulama say that this is things of fudul and excessive things. But things about fiqh and matters, the Prophet ﷺ, people ask, فَسَرُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, ask the people who know if you don't know. So we're commanded to ask a question, right? And so this is very important, the relationship. Those caretakers of knowledge and those who are required to learn a certain amount of that knowledge. So you have the people that take it upon themselves to يَتَبَحَّرُوا أو يَتَمَحَّرُوا. The Prophet ﷺ praised the mahara fil Quran, right? He praised the learners of Quran, the students of Quran, but he praised the mahara. The mahir is the one اتَّسَعْ فِي عِلْمِهِ, that he has a vast knowledge. So the mahir in Quran memorizes the Quran, he knows the tajweed, he knows the ahkam, he knows the rulings. That's the mahir. And so he's the one you go to learn or her, to take your Quran from. This relationship is very important. Now, in terms of knowledge, what is the criterion? What's the mi'yar? Like, how do we know knowledge? If I'm not a scholar, how do I know scholarship is sound? How do I know that? There's certain things that we have that were put in as again, check and balance to know. The first thing is the Prophet ﷺ told us to be with the jama'ah. And this is why they're called Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the people of Sunnah and Jama'ah, the majority of people. And the hadith has some weakness in it, but the meaning is sound. Alaykum bis sawad al-azam, be with the vast majority. And the Prophet said, لا تجتمع أمتي على الضلالة, in Al-Hakim's recension. لا تجتمع أمتي على الضلالة. And the meaning is sound, because the ummah itself has a isma, and this means the mujtahidun, the ulama, will not agree upon error. And this is why if all of the ulama agree on something, like we all know that liwata is haram, homosexuality is haram. There's no disagreement in the history of Islam on homosexuality, none whatsoever. All of the ulama since the beginning of Islam until today. So anybody that comes today and tells you, no, you misread these ayahs and think, no, we reject it. We reject it. Nobody. That's ma'lum min ad-din daruratan. So there are things that are known by consensus, and so the Prophet told us to be with this majority. And this is called the ijma'at. And some of our ulama wrote about these things. Now, the ulama over time agreed on certain things. For instance, there were many qira'at, and this is something that the Hagarites pointed out to their very stupid arguments about how the Quran was a lot of different books and things like this. But they pointed out in the early part of Islam there were many qira'at. That's true. Muslims never denied that. There are what are called qira'at shadda. But the ulama agreed that there were 10 qira'at. And these qira'at are mutawatira 7, and then the 3. These are, and then there's the ahad qira'at. And then after that there's the shudud qira'at. These are the qira'at shadda. قَدْ جَعْلَ رَبُّشِ تَحْتَشِ سَرِيًّا. That's a qira'ah shadda. It's there because the Arabs, the Jahili Arabs used to say shh for a woman. Kayfa halushi. You know, and they still say that in some Gulf states. They say kayf halaj. Right? That's actually a Jahili way of addressing a female person. But it's shadda because it's not the qira'at that the Prophet ﷺ gave us. So they agreed upon qira'at. And then they agreed upon how the ada'u tajweed is agreed upon. These things are agreed upon. And so if you take your Quran, when you study your Quran, you have to take it from somebody who's in a isnad, who knows the ahkam. Who knows the ahkam. And so they have to know the ada'ul ahkam, how to give the words their proper rights. Because every letter has a right. It has a right, and then it has what are called awarid, the things that occur to it, they call it the mustahaq. So it has a haq and a mustahaq. So a letter like qaf, it has a haq, right? And then it has a mustahaq in like at the end of the ayah, it has a certain bounce that you give it, right? If you end on qaf, you give it a bounce, because that's its istihqaq, because it's a qalqala letter. So these are the things that you have to learn. You take them from somebody who knows them. Now, in terms of fiqh, the ulama differed about fiqh also. There were different opinions. Now, one of my favorite examples, because this is an example of a hadith that, because people say, why do we need 4 madhabs? Or, 5 with the Ja'fari madhab, or 6 with the Zaydi madhab. Why do we need these madhabs? Like, why can't we all just be on one madhab? Kitab wa sunnah. Brother, kitab wa sunnah, right? Why can't we just all get together and just love one another and not have all these differences, right? This is the idea. First of all, language by its very nature is ambiguous. The nature of language is ambiguous. We use double entendres all the time. I can say a Muslim woman doesn't have a right to bear arms. Right? I can say that, right? Do I mean she can't have a sword? No, I mean she can't bear her arms. Right? So she can bear arms, but she can't bear arms. Right? So just me saying that, this is the ambiguity of language that the postmoderns love to relish in. Derrida and all these people that talk about all the sounds of language and how language changes meaning by sounds. So this is very important to acknowledge. If you study in Arabic, you have to study, there's a process in Arabic. You have to learn mufradat. You have to learn vocabulary. Vocabulary is very extensive in Arabic. You can go on and on and on. And vocabulary never ends. They say, لا يحيط بالعربية إلا نبي. Only a prophet can encompass Arabic. No human being can learn the whole entire language of Arabic. It's too vast. But the Prophet ﷺ spoke to us in a language, the hadith is more difficult than the Quran. Once you get into hadith, there are much more gharaib of hadith than there are of Quran. The Quran has an Arabic vocabulary that is more limited than the hadith vocabulary. But the Quran has gharaib. It has words that are unusual. Like talah. In Arabic, talah is well known. It's an acacia tree. It's a certain desert tree that has thorns on it. And the talha is, the Arabs like to name their men after trees, because trees are great things. They give you shade, they protect you. You can make things from them. So talah is a strong thing. So talha is something strong. salb or sulb. So but in the Quran, in Surah Al-Waqiyah, tarh is the banana tree. That's something you only get when you read tafsir. So there is a gharib al-Quran. It's not the normal usage of tarh in Arabic. Tarh al-mandud. It's not the normal usage. And we know that from the great mufassirun who took from people like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, who explain these things. If you look at a hadith like Man sama Ramadan wa atba'ahu sittan min Shawwal, right? فَكَأَنَّمَا صَامَ الدَّهَرِ. If you fast Ramadan and you follow it with 6 days min Shawwal, from Shawwal, it's as if you fasted the whole time, right? Because 10, 30, 300, 6, 360, so it's like fasting the whole year, right? If you work it out like that. But Imam Shafi'i said the min here is a partitive min, right? That it means min Shawwal. So in Arabic you say akaltu, right? Min al-fakiha. I ate from the fakiha. In other words, here's a plate of fruit and I took one of them. So this is min hadhihi al-fawakih, right? This is from that, okay? That's a type of min in Arabic which is called minnu tab'id, right? The partitive min, it's part of. Akaltu min al-khubzi, sharibtu min al-ma'i. I drank some of the water. I ate some of the bread, right? So that's what Imam Shafi'i said the min was that type of min. Because he meant part, if you fast 6 days from Shawwal, part of Shawwal, the 6 from the part. Imam Malik said no, that min is min al-ibtida. It means the beginning with. So in Arabic you say, Ataytu min Mekkata. I came from Mecca. It means I began my journey in Mecca. So Imam Malik said, that min is not a partitive min, it's a min of beginning. It's the incipio min, it's where you began from. And so when I say, Ataytu min hunak, I came from there. I don't mean a part of there, but I could say, Ana min America. In other words, I'm from America, but I'm from California, which is a part of America. I could say that like that. But ataytu min America. So Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i differed in these. Who's right? The Prophet ﷺ didn't clarify it. It's ambiguous. The language is ambiguous by its nature, which means one could be right and the other's wrong. Those are called the mukhatti'ah. The usulis that say one is right, the other's wrong, those are called the mukhatti'ah. There's another group who are called the Musawwiba, and they say, no, they're both right. Imam Shafi'i is taking the azima, and Imam Malik is taking the rukhsa. And this is the madhab of Imam al-Sha'rani, because Imam al-Sha'rani says, when one of them is hard, another is easy, to create a balance. And this is why if the Sahaba wanted rukhas, they used to go to who? Ibn Abbas. And if they wanted azaim, they would go to who? Ibn Umar. Because they were different views. So they knew the same question could have more than one answer. And they knew which one they wanted to go to. The son of Umar or Bani Hashim. Right? Which one? Because Umar was, his nature, he took the azima always. Umar. إِذَا سَرَكَ الشَّيْطَانُ فِجًّا إذا سرك عمر فجا سرك الشيطان فجا آخر. If Umar went down a path, shaitan would go down another path. Like the woman playing the duf, with the Prophet ﷺ, and Abu Bakr came in, she kept playing. And then Uthman came in, she kept playing. And then Umar came in, she put it under and hid it. She sat on it. The Prophet laughed. He said, she felt comfortable with Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, but Umar, I'm not taking any chances. So this is the religion is like this. You can't fix it. You have to have an elasticity of your mind. You have to expand your horizons. And this is how you get real ittihad. The unity is with diversity, but the diversity has its limits. It has boundaries. There are usul. There are limits to interpretation, interpretive limits, hermeneutical limits. You can't go beyond those. And those are determined by the great imams of Islam. They have determined these limits of interpretation. And this is where you get ta'wil ba'id and ta'wil qarib. So you get far-fetched interpretations, like the man who said that ice didn't break fasting because it wasn't food and it wasn't drink. Right? I mean, that's a far-fetched, but that's an opinion. You'll find that in the books. So these are the type things that the ulama reject, and you'll find many examples of this in the. So who do you take your fiqh from? The ulama agreed on these for the Sunni Muslims. They agreed on these four. They said these four imams are sound. Now people say, well, they're all men, right? And you can make mistakes. So maybe Malik made a mistake. This is a lack of understanding of what the madhabs are. When you see the Maliki madhab, Malik is part of a school. They're called the school of Ahl al-Medina. In fact, Ibn Abd Barr does not call his book on fiqh the Maliki fiqh. He calls it fiqh Ahl al-Medina, the fiqh of the people of Medina. So he actually sees fiqh as being of the school of Medina. When you go to Abu Hanifa, he's following a certain madhab, which is the madhab of Ibn Mas'ud and his people. And this is a scholastic school. When you go to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, also you get a methodology. When you go to Imam Shafi'i, you get a methodology. Now each one of these imams had their own methodologies. These methodologies come partly from their own genius, but largely from the environment that they grew up in. So Imam Malik radiallahu anhu has certain preferences over other things, and this is really important to understand. Because Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, for instance, he takes certain universals in the Quran and he will not look at hadiths that are sound if they're overridden by these universals in the Quran. He will also not look, for instance, Abu Huraira was a muhaddith, but he wasn't a faqih. If Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu sees something where the fiqh is not clear in Abu Huraira's transmission, he might not take that. These are part of the usul of Abu Hanifa. Imam Malik will take the amal over the ahad hadith in many cases, because he says, I prefer 1,000 of the tabi'een who lived with all these sahaba over solitary hadith that might not be right. So I'll give you an example. There's a hadith in the Sahih collection that says the Prophet prohibited fasting on Friday. Imam Malik knew the hadith, but he said, I found the righteous people of Medina fasting on Friday. And so he didn't take the hadith. Now people say, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. And that's true. If the hadith is sound, it's my madhab. But that has caveats. That's not a blanket statement. Because Imam Malik is not saying that I'm rejecting the hadith. He's saying this practice is a type of hadith, because these men would not have done it unless they saw the Sahaba doing it, and the Sahaba wouldn't have done it unless they knew the Prophet ﷺ was pleased with it. And I prefer the majority here doing this practice than taking a solitary hadith, which might have been for one man. There might have been some error in it, because hadiths that are solitary are probabilistic. These are the usul of our tradition. I mean, this is really important to understand. So when you adapt a madhab, you are adapting a school. And that school has 1,400 years of revising, literally. I mean, all of these masail have been exhausted. The Malikis knew the Shafi'i, the Hanafi, the Hanbali. The Malikis, sometimes you find ta'asub, undeniably. You will find periods where certain scholars just took their position. And other times you won't. It just depends. But undeniably, people will get entrenched in positions. But the great scholars of these madhabs recognize the validity of the other schools, but they adhere to their own schools because of the proofs in them. They have their tarjihat, which are preferences. You will get personal preferences. So you will find great scholars that go against the dominant opinion. Al-Ghazali is a good example of that, who's a Shafi'i, and yet he does not agree with the Shafi'i madhab about Ayn al-Kaaba outside of Mecca being a qibla. In other words, that you have to get Ayn al-Kaaba. He said it's not. It's a jiha, which is the position of Ahmad, Abu Hanifa, and Imam Malik. Right? So even though his madhab said one thing, he had a tarjih in his madhab. This is his way. So how do we know who to follow amongst these? Most of you follow because your families. You come from Pakistan, you're Hanafi. And you might not know it or not, but you're Maturidi as well. and your family, your ancestors, almost invariably Naqshbandi or Chisti or Qadri, usually, because 70% of the Muslim Ummah followed a tariqah 100 years ago, literally. The vast majority of Muslims had tariqah, and Tasawwuf was simply just part of Islam. And this war against Sufism, which the Sufis also, or the Mutasawwifa, have to take some responsibility for as well, because there are a lot of things in Sufism now that are just completely outrageous, undeniably. And anybody that denies that is just denying reality. So this is important because, we have a principle. Abdurrahman al-Akhbari said, قد قال بعض سادة الصوفية مقالة جريرة صفية إذا رأيت رجلا يطير أو فوق ماء البحر قد يسير ولم يقف عند حدود الشرع فإنه مستدرج أو بدعي واعلم أن خارق الروحاني لتابع السنة والقرآن. He said there's a qaida that the Sufiya have. If you see a man flying in the air or walking on the water and he doesn't follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, leave him, because he's mustadraj and he's a bid'i. And they said that the real khariq is for the people who follow the Quran and the sunnah. ليس تصوف لبس الصوفي ترقعه ولا بكاؤك إذا غنى المغنون ولا رقص ولا شعر ولا طرب ولا تغاش كأن قد صرت مجنونا بل التصوف أن تصفو بلا كدر وتتبع الحق والقرآن والدين وأن ترى خاشعا مكتئبا حزينا على ذنوبك طول الدهر محزونا. Oh, I got some khalal in there, but it's from Siraj al-Muridin of Qadi Abu Bakr. He said Sufism is not wearing a certain patched cloak. He said Sufism is not getting excited when the singers sing, like Qawwali or something, and start passing out. He said Sufism isn't like shouting and tearing your clothes and getting excited. He said it's following the haqq and the Quran and the Sunnah, and it's being in a state of seriousness and grievous over your sins. That's what Tasawwuf is. The people of Tasawwuf were the most fervent followers of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And now you have, it's birwiratha, people inherit things, their father was a sheikh, they become a sheikh. You have people that use it to collect money. You have, all kinds of abuses. And this is part of religion. If you read the maqamat of Badi'u Zaman al-Hamadani, he has a great religious charlatan in there. This was part of the literature of the Muslims. Abu Fath al-Iskandari, and he was a great religious charlatan. He displayed piety, and he would go and give these beautiful talks in the most eloquent Arabic, and he would get everybody to give him all his money. He would tell lies about seeing the Prophet ﷺ. Badi'u Zaman was teaching people that there are people that abuse religion. When you become a victim of one of these people, it causes a profound distrust in your heart. And it's one of the worst things that can be done to a human being is to because people, by their fitrah, they trust people. They trust people's piety. And if you display piety, you should be pious. But to be a complete fraud, we're all worried of nifaq, and we should be. But you shouldn't use the religion for your personal inurement, as they say in legal jargon. Just acquiring things. And this happens. People abuse it. So this is what's happened with Tasawwuf. And it doesn't mean that there aren't people, righteous people. Now I want to just talk about, and then in Aqidah, the Muslims agreed upon certain methodologies. They agreed upon the methodology of Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari. This is, even though the ones that disagree with him, because not everybody agreed with the Ash'aris, and the Ash'aris fought it out for a long time to get to the position they got to. And they did get help from the Salatin as well. This is historically factual.